Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Wednesday, August 28th. Thought I would drop in and do a live support group meeting and let's see if anybody's having flares, if anybody needs any help on anything. Our recorded or regularly scheduled support group meetings are the first and third Sunday of every month at 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. However, I love to do drop-in meetings and just see how people are doing. So that's what we're going to do today. Hello, Betsa. It's nice to see you. I have a lot of things to talk about today. I've got new research. I've got diet information. I have a Sister Protect update. I've got all sorts of things like that. Oh, Becky, girl, I am so sorry to hear that you're having a rough week. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. Let's see if we can help. Hello, Charlene. So if you guys, for those of you on Facebook, if you can post in your support group, so we've gone live with a support group meeting, that would be oh so great. And if I'm looking up here, it's because I'm looking at Facebook. If I'm looking down here, it's because I am looking to YouTube because we are simulcasting on both platforms right now. Hello, YouTube. Nice to see you. Hi, Vanessa. Nice to see you too. Tabitha. Hey, hey. Hi, Sherry. Hi. Let's see here. Hi, Charlene. Hi, Christine. Hi, Elise. Oh my God. So, have you ever woken up and, like I was having the best dream ever, like right before I woke up. It's like, I just felt really, really good. I slept really good. And then like this feeling of dread kind of woke me up. I'm like, what the hell is this? I kind of believe that our senses kind of tell us things. It's like, okay, why would I be feeling a little scared right now? I was actually a little scared. And, I was like, okay, I got myself up, got dressed, fixed breakfast for my folks. And I'm going, what the hell is this all about? Why am I kind of freaky? And then it happened. You know what happened? Like literally an hour and a half ago, the sheriff's helicopter showed up and was circling for a half an hour over my street, including over my freaking house. I have never seen the helicopter so low. I was like waiting for the shelter in place warning, and it was here for 30 minutes, just in this one little block that I live on, street on both sides. And I'm just like going, okay, this is it. This is why this is why the spirits were kind of saying, be prepared. Something really weird's going to happen today. And we're still waiting for an explanation. It was a manhunt of some kind right in my neighborhood. It's crazy stuff, my friends. This is a crazy world right now. Becky says, I'm at the beach this week on vacation. Last night I had the worst pain, but it was like period cramps or constipation, but worse, couldn't sleep. So do you think it was a pelvic floor spasm? I was working with a patient yesterday, so you guys know that my purpose in doing these meetings is to make you so strong, so knowledgeable, so informed that nobody can mess with you. Nobody can tell you that it's all in your head. Nobody can say that there are no treatments, right? I want to make you a warrior. I really do. I want to make you an IC warrior. And part of that has to do with you being able to really communicate what your symptoms are. And that's hard. It's really, really hard. So I was working with a patient yesterday. I did 2 coachings yesterday, and she really could not tell me where her pain was. It's fascinating. And so whenever I'm working with patients, it's like, okay, is your pain inside your body or outside of your body? That's like question number 1. And it's like, okay. And they're like, I don't know. Okay. So can you touch it with your finger? Can you put your finger where the pain is? And about half of you can say yes, and about half of you can say no. And for those of you who can say yes, for those of you who, as a typical example, you feel a burning sensation when you're peeing, you feel irritation, as you're peeing and your urine feels hot. Well, we know what that is. Your urine really isn't that hot. That usually means you've got some estrogen atrophy. So she was kind of rotating between external pain and internal pain. It's like, okay, so what's the quality and health of your skin down there? I mean, are you dry? And she's like, I don't think so. And I went, well, has a doctor looked? And she was like, yeah. And I said, did they prescribe you anything? And she's like, yeah. And it's like, what did they prescribe you? Estrogen. It's like, okay, why did they prescribe you estrogen? She's like, well, because it was dry. And I'm like, okay, you're dry. Did you ever use it? And her answer was no. It's like, okay, we need to start using that estrogen. Your doctor said you were dry. And, this whole concept of cause and effect is so really important. It's very, very hard to talk about treatments until we understand your unique anatomy. And for us to understand your unique anatomy, you got to be able to really clearly describe where it is. So is it high? Is it low? Is it inside of your body? Is it outside of your body? Is it on the left side? Is it on the right side? Is there a spot? I think the most interesting patients are the patients who have a spot. And she had a spot where her pain always came from. And it was fascinating. I mean, because most IC patients, your pain tends to be a little bit diffuse. You feel pain in your bladder, you feel pain in your pelvis, but you don't normally point to a spot. And so it's like, okay, tell me about the spot. Where's the spot located? And she's like, I don't know. And it's like, okay, well, let's think about it here. Is it in your vagina? Or is it in your bladder? And she's like, I think it's in my vagina. It's like, okay, has anybody looked in your vagina? Yes. What was going on in your vagina? Nothing. Okay, so then there's nothing physically wrong with your vagina. And then it was, okay, has anybody looked in your bladder? And she said, yes. And I went, okay, what did they see in your bladder? She said, nothing. And I went, all right, all bets are off now. You have got to try to understand this spot. And ultimately, what was so interesting about her case is that it went back to an old surgery. And I think she has what I have, which are surgical adhesions in this one spot that was triggering a lot of her pain. So again, your ability to communicate your symptoms is important. Please don't be one of those patients who says, when the doctor comes in and you say, I'm fine. Oh, please, God, don't do that. You're not fine. You wouldn't be at the doctor if you were fine. Be honest about it. Talk about your symptoms. Don't cry. Talk about your symptoms. When do you feel the best? When do you feel the worst? What words can you use to describe it? Try to describe the location. What makes it feel better? What makes it feel worse? These are all important things for your doctor to know as they're trying to figure out what's going on with you, because here's the reality. Remember, we don't think of IC as a incurable bladder disease anymore. We don't. And I know that there's one Facebook group that makes you sign a form saying where you agree it's incurable. That's not true anymore. This is more of a pelvic pain syndrome. Okay, now why do we say that? Because there are structures outside of the bladder that can be influencing the bladder and triggering pain in the bladder. So yes, some of you have bladder damage, maybe from chemotherapy, maybe from drinking too much coffee or diet soda, maybe from some sort of chemical exposure like ketamine. But more of you have muscle issues. There's a muscle condition going on from a childhood athletics, from having a baby, from a rape, from an accident, from a fall. That it's very, very interesting that we now know that the pelvic floor muscles, when injured and tight, can trigger bladder symptoms. And we know this because these patients don't respond to bladder therapies. It's so interesting, right? Like this is my 25th anniversary. Like literally next month is my 25th anniversary being an IC support group leader. And back then, there was always a subset of patients who didn't respond to bladder treatments. And there was always a subset of patients who were not diet sensitive. And it's like, okay, that's so weird. Like, Wait, you can't drink coffee, but you can drink coffee and I'm having a what? What? Wait. You can drink cranberry? You can drink lemonade? What? Okay, now we know why. Now we know why there's such interesting diversity with diet. And again, it's because of this subtyping or these variants of pelvic pain. If your problem is driven by your muscles, the odds are you're probably not going to be diet sensitive. If your problem is driven by Hunter's lesions or chronic infection, you are going to be diet sensitive. But then we also have to look at the concept of other organs that are involved. Could you have a fibroid tumor pressing on your bladder? I was working with one patient last week, absolutely had a big fibroid tumor pushing on her bladder. And the question was, do we get it treated? And the answer is, hell yes. Because we now have research that shows, solid research. I went over this last year when the study came out, that the great majority of patients with fibroids appear to have bladder symptoms. And in the study, when they removed the fibroids, 65% were cured. Cured, my friends. That's why we're not saying curable anymore, because if yours is being driven by fibroids, there is a chance for a cure there. There is a chance for a cure if yours is pelvic floor. We also have to look at endometriosis. We also have to look at what the very interesting concept of injury or trauma, surgical injury or trauma. I told you the story. To me, I was telling her this story yesterday as we were trying to figure out what the hell was going on with her symptoms. And I started talking about past surgeries, and she said she'd had past pelvic surgery. And I was telling her the story of the retired internist, right? The 65-year-old woman who I met at trivia, 6 months ago or 8 months ago, who after trivia ended, we were all just talking about what we do. And I said, hey, I work with pelvic pain patients and IC patients. She goes, man, I got a great pelvic pain story to tell you. It's like, okay, give it to me, because I love pelvic pain stories, because they're so useful for all of us to understand. And she said, well, she was a runner and she ran, was she? Yeah, she was a runner, 20 miles a week. And all of a sudden, running was painful and she was having to pee a lot. And it was getting worse and worse. So she went to urology, and urology looked in her bladder and they couldn't find anything wrong. And they kind of gave her the little it's all in your head thing, even though she was another doctor. And it got worse and worse. And then she started feeling pressure one day. And so she went to the bathroom and she pushed a little bit. And what popped out but a row of blue stitches? She's like looking at the toilet going, what the? Those are stitches. What the hell? She was stunned. And she accidentally flushed them. She calls the doctor. She says, you're not going to believe what happened. I just peed out stitches. And the doctor's like, yeah, right. But she felt better. So life went on. And then suddenly she was getting worse again. Not only was she getting worse, she was getting substantially worse. She couldn't run. Then she couldn't walk. And she was barely functioning. Her pain was so intense. And she was finally able to convince somebody to do a laparotomy, to look. And when they opened her up, her belly was filled with floating blue polypropylene stitches. Now, what is polypropylene? You guys all know about the mesh controversy, right? Meshes made of polypropylene have severely damaged tens of thousands of women around the world, because polypropylene is not meant to be in the human body. Polypropylene is really normally meant to close wounds, and then you pull the stitch out and you're fine. She had a tummy tuck after having a baby 20 years earlier. And she distinctly remembered that she agreed to allow her surgery to be a teaching surgery, and a resident performed it. And the resident mistakenly used the wrong stitches in her belly. So what is polypropylene known for? It's known for migrating. It moves. If you've got a polypropylene mesh, we know that polypropylene, which starts out as a white square, or a white rectangle, within months becomes black and twisted. and then it moves. And so we know that there's something called, what is it, vaginal? Well, we know that it can extrude through the vaginal wall. And so these patients, when they have sex, their husbands can feel this rough mesh in their vaginal wall. But we also know mesh can protrude into the urethra. It can protrude through the urethra. And in her case, her stitches were migrating through her bladder wall. And when they went in and they found more that was trying to, that was clearly beginning to influence yet again her bladder. And that's why she was having so much pain. So is that an incurable bladder disease? No, it's not, because she was cured when they removed the stitches. But they had to do exploratory surgery. They had to find all the stitches and pray they got them all. So again, here we have a doctor, very highly respected in her field in California, where we have a little bit more progressive viewpoints about chronic diseases. And she was being disrespected by her own peers because they didn't believe her. They suggested that it was all in her head. And it was a stunning, stunning thing. And so, again, my purpose in doing these lectures is to make you so strong, so knowledgeable, so informed that you can have a checklist of things to rule out. And so with this patient I was working with yesterday, it's like, okay, here's your checklist. Checklist number 1 is, what's the state of your skin? Do you have estrogen atrophy? Checklist number 2 is, what the heck is going on with your pelvic floor? Is there anything that's going on with your pelvic floor? And checklist number 3 related to a previous surgery that she'd had in the area. It's like, oh, is there any way that we can get some data about what they did with that original surgery, since it looks like your pain is coming from that location? And we sent her on her way to start gathering some data. And you as patients, you've really got to understand that is your job. That is your job. When you go to the doctor, it's not just about asking for help. It's not just about asking for treatment. It's not just about asking for pain care. The most important question is, what could be triggering this? Can you help me understand what in my pelvis is triggering this symptom? And what you cannot do is be that person who says, I don't care what you do anything. I got an email from somebody who had her bladder stripped, back when she was, oh no, was that her? Okay, yesterday, it was somebody who was saying that back when they were diagnosed, they had their bladder wall stripped off because that's what they did back then. But we don't do that anymore. We don't want to do that anymore. Our goal now is to try to understand your anatomy. Is there anything physically wrong with your bladder? Is there anything physically wrong with your pelvic floor? Is there anything else that could be contributing to some of those symptoms in your pelvis? And we've got to work, we got to work through that list. And here, hold on a sec. I just got an email from somebody who looks like they're in distress. Hold on. Oh, how cool is that? He's not in distress. That's wonderful. All right. So let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Osborne. I am the National IC Support Group Leader. I've been a support group leader for 25 years. Holy hell, how did that happen? I have 3 college degrees. For those of you who might be interested, what my academic credentials are is I have a degree in chemistry. I have a degree in pharmacology, drug development, and then because I'm an animal lover and could not tolerate the animal research that was happening in the pharmacology labs, I went back to grad school and proceeded on my way to a psychology degree. When my IC hit, I had just earned a presidential fellowship from the White House, and then bam, couldn't do anything. And so as I was pondering trying to get my PhD, because that's a normal next step for presidential fellows, I found a a dissertation at Stanford about bringing support online. And I'm very, very proud that I was the first person to develop an online support center for IC. This was, again, back in the AOL days. We joined AOL, started support groups for all bladder patients, cancer patients, prostate patients, all that sort of stuff. And then the IC Network, our website, is in fact my old doctoral dissertation proposal, which now 25 years later continues to be the top rated website on IC. I curate all the information, sat on the IC Army Research Panel for about 10 years. And I kind of divide my time between working with patients and working with researchers. And then also we have a shop. And so I also own a store. But I wear 3 hats every day. I'm a patient first, then I'm a support group leader, and then I'm a shop owner. I always let the patient and the shop and the support group leader dominate anything that I do. So we've been doing these live streams for about a year now, and I'm really, really happy with them. I enjoy myself tremendously, and I hope that you get some good information too with them. That said, I do these meetings in 3 sections. I usually do 30 minutes of education, 2 hours of taking your questions, and then usually some sort of free giveaway. And so today, in addition to what I just talked about, I have a couple of new research studies that I wanted to go over. But before we even do that, I need your help. We desperately need to update our diet information. And about a year ago, we launched a research study where we asked you for feedback on diet. Are there any foods that are not listed? Are there any foods that you might disagree with? I want to, if I can just find the time, we want to release a new list, a new updated list this year. Julie Byer's on board, and she and I and Bev Lauman were the ones who created that big, 7-page long diet list that most of you have. We've been doing that for 20 years now. But it's time for a new one. So if there are any foods that we have missed that you would like to see on the diet list, I would really appreciate it if you could send me an email. Or send me a message through Facebook. icnetwork@mac.com is my email address, icnetwork@mac.com. I really, 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 really want to do this year. Okay, so please think about it. Like somebody was asking about cactus and acid level. Of course, I have absolutely no idea. If you've got a food that you want to add that you already know is bladder friendly, or if you've got a food that has kicked you in the bladder big time and you were stunned at how bad you felt, that's the kind of feedback I want, because we really, really need to update that diet information. And for those of you who are new to this, when you go to our website and you go to the diet information, you're going to see 2 different lists. You're going to see a little list from research studies. And that's where you start. In fact, where is it? Hold on a second. All right. This, my friend, is the little list, right? We've got this little card, but all of our discussion on our website it begins first with the actual research results. So what do we know? We know that the foods to avoid: regular and decaf coffee, black and green tea, sodas, alcohols, lemon, orange, grapefruit, pineapple, some fruit juices like cranberry, some the vegetables, tomatoes particularly, flavor enhancers like hot pepper, spicy foods, chili, horseradish, vinegar, MSG, artificial sweeteners, and cured meats like pepperoni and salami. And then the foods that are usually bladder friendly are water, essence waters, hint essence water. Like I'm drinking right now. I've got my LaCroix sparkling water. Always on ice, because we use the ice to dilute any residual acid. And if they're sparkling, there's going to be a little bit of carbonic acid in there. Tiny, tiny bit. You don't need to worry about it so much. Fruits are your friend, with the exception of citrus. Vegetables are your friend. Poultry, I mean, the main meats are fine, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so when you go to our website, you know, you're going to find this little research list. But then we also have this really long list. And hold on. Where is it? Here it is. Here it is. Most of you probably have this already, which is our Icy Diet Guide. And even though it's dated 2012, it's, you know, it's totally solid. It's fine. So we also have, oh, this is a good example. Okay, so look. So this is the research. These are the research foods that I read off. Most bothersome, least bothersome. But then what you're going to find is you're going to find a 3-column diet list, which is usually bladder friendly, foods we're trying, foods to avoid. And this is a list I want to update. Because, you know, I mean, there are thousands of foods, and I think we've got like 500 listed. If there's any food out there that you absolutely rely on that really helps you, please let me know what it is if it's not on this list. And the same is true if there's a food that you've eaten that has just had you screaming bloody murder. Oh my God, what the hell was in that is killing my bladder? That's something I want to know too, okay? Because we want to release this, but with a 2020 edition rather than a 2012. I mean, 8 years. Don't you think it's about time? Yeah, I think it's about time. And again, remember how we started this meeting. So you got to remember that not everybody's diet sensitive, but some of you are. And if you are, this is really important. All righty. The other thing that I want to remind you is that September is Icy Awareness Month. When we do our life support group meeting on Sunday, we're going to be kicking it off. So I am doing a life support group meeting this weekend, even though it's Labor Day, and I know some of you will be away, but you can always watch the video, so that's fine. But please come on over to icyawareness.org, and I want to give you a little sneak peek of something that's pretty exciting. Hold on. I'm sitting on my yoga ball. You see me bouncing. I'm sitting on my yoga ball. So you know, y'all got to understand here that there's no big company underwriting Icy Awareness Month. This is all about you and I doing stuff. You know, I wrote the press release. Hopefully you will use the press release and send it to your local paper, right? Okay. So one of the things that we have not had in a while is a t-shirt. And so Donna Townsend, who has been very, very active this year and vocal this year, which is so great because seriously, you know, I can't do it all and I need lots and lots of help, and you guys have important perspectives. So you know what she did is she created some t-shirts. And so I want to, oh wait, I left the 2 best ones in my bedroom. Hold on. And if you're wondering why I'm working from home, it's because I'm caring for a 96-year-old and a 90-year-old, and I can't leave them alone. So I had to close my main office and move myself back home. And the rest of the Icy Network staff, that's our small staff of 3 people, work up in our warehouse up in Hillsburg. Okay, so Donna decided to play with some t-shirt designs, and I want to show them to you because I'm going to put a couple of them up on I think probably on Cafe Press, or I might go ahead and just have t-shirts made. We'll see. So I want to see what you think. You guys tell me what you think. Icy Strong. How cool is that? Then that's kind of our theme this year is Icy Strong. Hey, oh, hello, Allison from New Zealand. Hello, Christine. Hello, Michelle from Jersey. Okay, and guys, if you're on Facebook, remember it scrolls quickly by, and if I miss your question, don't take it personally, just ask it again. All right, So, how do you like this t-shirt? Would you wear this? Would anybody out there wear this? I know I would. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Here is the second one. How do you like that one? I think this one's awesome. This one's absolutely awesome. And our theme this year is we are stronger together. And what we're trying to do is honor support group leaders this year. So we have a list of all the support groups that we could find, both in person and online, including on Facebook. We tried to list every IC support group on Facebook that we could. Here's another one that she did. IC Survivor. And this one, these were test runs, so some of these aren't really as clear as they could be. But she did put this one on the back, but without the black, right? But I mean, I like the concept of IC Survivor. I think that that's good. I feel like a survivor. I feel like a warrior too. Okay, you don't need to see that one. Let's see. This is an interesting one. Icy Angel. Now, the reason why, for those of you who don't know, the Icy Angel Program was launched about 15 years ago in honor of an IC patient who helped me start the IC network, who was murdered. And what we did is we had a low-income assistance fund with that. We adopted low-income families for the holidays, and patients adopted other families and sent them gifts, and we sent them meals and things like that through our Icy Angel program for about 10 years before we just didn't have the resources to continue to do it, or more importantly, to have somebody to run it, because it was run by volunteers. Let's see. It's this one. This is one that she was playing with. ICers are lovable. I mean, and obviously the design needs a little bit of work because it kind of fed over to the edges. But, would you guys wear a teal colored shirt, or would you prefer a white shirt? Lisa says she would not wear IC Survivor, but you would wear IC Strong. Okay. Anybody else have any feedback? I think really what we're down to, these are the finalists. This one, IC Strong, or this one, IC Strong. And I think I'm going to put them both up. And I'll try to get something up in the next couple of days. And if you want one, you can order it, and a percentage of the proceeds are going to go right to IC research. So thank you, Donna Townsend, for not just saying she would help, but actually doing it and doing a fabulous job. She did a fabulous job playing with designs, and I'm so incredibly grateful. There's an Icy Angel YouTube channel. All right, then we will not do IC. It's so hard because everything's been used. I mean, we were using IC Strong, IC Warrior 20 years ago. It's not like these are not new, but we want to try not to tread on other people's things too much. So I think the hashtag IC Strong, I also like the hashtag IC Warrior, but I think for this year, it's going to be IC Strong. All right. Okay, I just want to go over a couple of new research studies real quick, and then we'll go ahead and dive into your questions. But there's a lot happening in the last week. So, as an example, we had our first 2-year study with stem cell therapy in IC that was just published a week ago by Dr. Elliot Lander. And Dr. Elliot Lander here in California is the researcher who has been exploring the concept of stem cell therapy for IC. The challenge with stem cell therapy is that there's no medication that is going to be approved. Therefore, there's no pharmaceutical company underwriting the research because you're treated with your own cells, right? You're treated with your own cells. And so getting this research done has been very, very difficult. This is what we call patient-funded research, where you literally, as the patient, pay for it because there's nobody underwriting it. Well, it's been going on for, I'm going to say 10 years now, 8 or 10 years now, and they just published a 2-year study, a total of 78 patients who did stem cell-based therapy. Here, hold on a sec. The objective of the study was to evaluate whether autologous stem cell-based therapy may mitigate the symptoms of IC. They use something called stromal vascular faction. So what is that? They do liposuction, they pull some of your fat cells, and then they process the fat cells. So they end up with kind of the soup of stem cells and growth factors. And so they say that this was deployed into 109 men and women with IC as a surgical procedure. The stem cell-rich biologic project was injected both systemically and regionally into pelvic floor targets. Patients were asked about quality of life every 3 months for 2 years. So out of this 109, 78 patients reported a positive response at year 1. Their symptoms and bother were statistically improved at 1 year. There were minimal adverse events associated with the harvesting, procurement, and clinical deployment of SVF. It shows good safety and efficacy and may have a role in the mitigation of IC. Now, a lot of you have asked about stem cell therapy and IC in the past. What his early data showed was that the response was not long-term. So his last study, which was probably released 3 or more years ago, showed that yes, patients were responding with better symptoms, better symptom management, better symptom control, but at about 6 months, symptoms diminished and they had to have another stem cell therapy. So what this one is showing is it's a bit more durable now. Of course, the ultimate flaw with stem cell therapy for us is that it simply isn't affordable. I haven't talked to him recently, although I did just put an article on our magazine from him. The cost for this, the last time we talked like 3-4 years ago, was literally $6,000-7,000 for the patient. So I don't know about you, but I don't have that money hanging around. So it's just really not affordable right now. See, you guys on Facebook are going away. 46 messages I haven't read yet. Terry Persinger, here, I want to address this real quick before I go back to research. Terry went to see a doctor today to try to get a referral to a rheumatologist because you're having so many symptoms that I think the IC and the endometriosis could be causing. And he told me it was all in my head. I was diagnosed 20 years ago. What'd you do, hon? It's stunning. It's stunning that we're seeing that, in 2019. I mean, that must be an older doctor who, when he went to medical school 40 years ago, they did teach in medical school that IC was all in your head. It wasn't until 1987 that our own government, our own National Institutes of Health, started researching IC more and legitimizing it. That's kind of when you say, I don't even have a good response for that right now. It's like, do you not have my medical records from my previous doctors? Do you not see the results of my hydrodistension? Do you not see this? Do you not see that? Why would you have the audacity to tell me it's all in my head? Terry, that's so hard. I'm so sorry. All right, let's go to another research study. This is another research study that was published a week ago, and this was on the advanced management of patients with Hunner's lesions, and this was really good. So this was a retrospective review. Patients who were being treated for Hunner's lesions from January 2005 to 2015, and what they found was, let's see, 55 patients with IC were included. Their average age was 65. 76% were women. The median symptom duration was 2 years. All patients had a biopsy to rule out cancer, as well as therapeutic fulguration, which resulted in subjective symptom improvement in 81% of patients. So in other words, when you cauterize or fulgurate those lesions, symptoms improve, often dramatically. And we know that from other studies. But what was interesting about this is they also did triamcinolone injections, the steroid injections into the center of the lesion. And in this subset of patients, 91% of patients who had a steroid injection had their symptoms improve dramatically. So again, this goes back to understanding the cause of your IC before you embark on treatment. If you've got Hunner's lesions and your doctor says, let's try Elmeron, the doctor doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Elmeron is not a therapy for Hunner's lesions. What's a therapy for Hunner's lesions are defined by the American Urology Association. It's going to be fulguration or laser therapy to seal the lesion, steroid injection, and we have two other therapies which have been found to be helpful. One is hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and the other one is Liris, Liris. Liris is the first treatment in history to heal Hunner's lesions after a 2-week treatment. Very, very exciting. We were stunned at how good it was, and now, unfortunately, Allergan has shelved it, and it is not available at this time, which is a great tragedy for us. And here's another very, very interesting research study for men with IC. And this comes from Dr. Lowell Parsons at UC San Diego. For those of you, many of you should recognize his name because Lowell Parsons is the doctor who invented Elmeron, who invented the potassium sensitivity test and the PUF questionnaire. He is a trailblazer in the IC movement and has done a tremendous amount of good for IC patients overall. They were intrigued by men with chronic pain in their scrotum. Now, men are interesting because men have really fascinating pain pathways and referral patterns. So if you were to talk with a man with IC, usually what they'll mention is that they've got pain at the tip of their penis, and it can be quite bad pain. Most do, but some don't. And here's a study in which they had 16 men complaining of chronic scrotal pain in their scrotum. And their theory is that that is another referral point. Not only is pain referred from the bladder to the tip of the penis, but they were guessing or hypothesizing that bladder pain could be referred to the scrotum. And in this study, what they did is they took 16 men with chronic pain, treated 8 with Elmeron and treated 8 with bladder installations with alkalinized lidocaine and heparin, and every single patient improved. So they are now theorizing that many men diagnosed with scrotal pain might actually have referred pain from their bladder. So that, you know what? Again, more proof, that this presents in many different ways. Let's see. I think there was one other I want to talk about. Some people have asked if they could actually bypass the bladder. If you've got a bladder that's, incredibly traumatized, couldn't they surgically just bypass the bladder and attach a ureter to the skin and collect your urine in a bag? And I haven't really, up to this point, seen a research study that talked about that until this month. And this is a study that came out of Denmark, and they compared patients who had a urinary diversion with patients who had bladder removal. And what they found was that surgical treatment with urinary diversion should be considered in patients with refractory IC bladder pain, especially patients diagnosed with Hunner's lesions. They say that it can support and save the bladder unless the patient is young or has severe treatment, a treatment-resistant pain. Let's see, 8 patients were treated with with a bladder removal, and 8 only had the diversion. More than half of the patients treated with the diversion alone through the follow-up period, which is 12 years. 9 of these patients prior to surgery were diagnosed with Hunner's lesions, and they had significantly greater pain relief than compared to the 21 patients who were not. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's something that's come up before in these meetings, is why can't they just bypass the bladder and give it a rest period? And I'd worked with a few patients they'd had that done, and then 6 months later or a year later, they reattach everything after the bladder's had an opportunity to kind of calm down. But it's certainly rare. It's very, very rarely done. But anyway, it's a very interesting study. Kim Osmond asked, can physical activity put you into flare? And the answer is hell yeah. Definitely. It's going to put you into a pelvic floor flare. Whenever you're exercising, we always tell patients it's very important to do exercises that keep your hips level. Right? So we don't want you running boom, 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 because what's that doing? That's tweaking your pelvic floor back and forth, right? And if you've got a really sore, painful bladder, doing this to your bladder and bouncing your bladder like that is not going to feel very good. And so as you're pondering your exercise, you want to do things that keep your hips level. Walking, fast walking, you could do an elliptical, you could do a recumbent bike, you could swim, but the last thing we want you to do is something that's going to tweak your pelvic floor if you're having pelvic floor issues. Now, hold on. I do think that there was one more research study. Actually, 2 more research studies. So here's a study that was published in the International Urogynecology Journal, and it was about the association of vulvar pain with urinary frequency urgency. Now, for anybody who has vulvodynia, I had vulvodynia in my 20s for a couple of years. It's brutal. For me, it felt like somebody was rubbed sandpaper over my vulva, and that it felt like very raw skin. It's vulvodynia. It makes it hard to wear jeans. You walk around in skirts without underwear. For some patients, the pain is agonizing. For others, it's just a nuisance. But vulvodynia is real. It's a chronic burning vulvar pain on contact. And so here was a study done at Boston University, and they were curious to see if vulvodynia patients had quote unquote frequency urgency, because if they had frequency urgency, could that then swing them into this pelvic pain syndrome that we're talking about? And what they found, let's see here, 211 patients with, 211 participants with 226, wait. Okay, so they had 211 patients diagnosed with vulvodynia, and their control group was 226 patients without vulvodynia. And what they did is they scored them with the PUF questionnaire, which is an IC symptom questionnaire, and then asked them more questions about how often was their frequency, could they sleep through the night, what kind of bother did they have, what kind of pain levels they had. And what they found is that 40% of the women with vulvodynia met the criteria for IC, compared only to 2% without. So they now believe that women with vulvodynia are substantially more likely to report voiding dysfunction and symptoms of urgency than women with no history of vulvar pain. And that's really interesting. It's really interesting because this is where your anatomy matters. Let me get this picture. Hold on. Nope, that's not it. Where's my book? Here it is. So one of the challenges with the pelvis, one of the challenges with the pelvis is that there's a lot of nerves that go from muscle and organ and your reproductive tract and your skin, and they all merge in one location at the spinal cord. And in this book, which is Dr. Angie Storr's When It Hurts Down Here, which is a fabulous book I recommend to everyone, she has a great picture of what that looks like. Here it is. So look at this. All of these nerves end up merging right at the spinal cord, right around L4, L5. And when they put tracers in the nerves for the bladder and the nerves for the bowel, what they found is that those tracers merged in nerves up at the top. So think about it. They're not separate and distinct systems. Neurologically, their nerves are connected. And we knew from research done a decade ago that if the bowel was irritated, the bladder would probably also become irritated through something called neurocrosstalk. And that's because the nerves are shared, right? These nerves up at the top are shared. So what this vulvodynia study correctly does, in my opinion, is it also now links the nerves of the vulva back into this system. And so what they found is that patients with vulvodynia pain and vulvar pain, 40% also had bladder pain. So could that neural crosstalk be at work there? Yeah, it probably is. It probably is. You know, when you sustain okay, so, as you know, I like to talk about Icy for many of you as injury or trauma, right? Because it begins with injury trauma for some of you. So think about what happens when you break your knee. So when you break your knee, a bone breaks and muscles are traumatized, or if you dislocate your knee, either or. So we know there's a bony structure injury, and we know that there's a corresponding muscle injury. But what about the nerves in the area? Are the nerves injured? And the answer is yeah, definitely. Everything gets injured. I mean, all structures have the potential of being injured when you suffer a major trauma. So we know bones heal, and we know muscles, if you give them the correct work, usually respond. But what do the nerves do? What do the nerves do? Now think about, now some of you are older like me, think about all those people who they start rubbing their knee when a storm is coming in or when it gets cold. So here's their knee that they broke 30 years ago. And yet in the right circumstance, when there's a weather change, their knee starts to throb. Why? Because the nerves in the area are now easier to turn on. And that's what happens in the pelvis. Is that nerves, as an example, I'll give you a little anatomy lesson. Your bladder has two functional nerve groups. You've got the alpha afferent nerves, which control frequency, urgency, and you've got the C fiber nerve, which controls pain. Now, the alpha afferent nerve is a nerve that is meant to be very, very easy to turn on. It's very easy to turn on because it's a nerve that tells you when you need to pee all day. It's supposed to be easy to turn on. Thus, the very first symptom you're going to experience whenever you have any sort of bladder issue is going to be frequency urgency. That's usually the very, very first symptom to appear, and it's the last symptom to go away. And for many of you, you have absolutely no pain. And the reason you have no pain is because your C fiber has not been turned on. Because the C fiber is hard to turn on. It takes a major trauma to turn that bladder pain nerve on, like repeated acid erosion or holding urine for so long your bladder gets stretched out and or ruptured or something like that. And what previous research studies showed is that for some patients, that pain nerve just gets a little easier to turn on. And so, think about it this way. You've got a normal person who's never had a bladder injury, and then you've got Jill Osborne. She's got the bladder injury. Normal person, you could put a 500, 750, 1,000 cc's of water in their bladder, and they're fine. They could walk around for hours before they've got to pee. You put 200 cc's of fluid in my healthy bladder. I have a perfectly healthy bladder. There are no wounds on my bladder. But you put 200 cc's of fluid in my bladder, and I'm going, I need to pee now. And that's because my nerves are different. My nerves are more sensitive. And we call that central sensitization, IC subtype 5. Sometimes it's inherited, and sometimes it's a result of injury. So again, with that vulvodynia study, I think it's really important. We used to call vulvodynia IC on the outside because that's kind of how it felt. And now it turns out, we were kind of right. That for some people, the nerves on the vulva become as irritated as the nerves in the bladder because of neural crosstalk, and also potentially because of some sort of trauma, which has lowered the threshold of that action potential of those pain nerves. I know that that's really advanced, and I'm sorry about it, but it is what it is. Okay, so like, seriously, my bladder is as perfect as it can be on the inside. There are no issues with my bladder at all, except I have a sensitive nervous system. Hello, redhead from Norway, inherited. And so it is my responsibility to respect the fact that the nerves throughout my body are a bit more sensitive. They're sensitive to a lot of stuff, and it's my job to protect them. Therefore, I'm not going to be doing caffeine, which is going to turn nerves on. I'm going to avoid foods which are going to be super irritating. I'm going to keep my life as stress-free as I can. And anyway, we've talked about that before. So anyway, I thought that was a really interesting study. I hope that makes sense. I kind of talking in a circle there. And one more study, and then I will put links to these studies on our website. Okay. What's the right term for this? The monkey on my back, or the monkey on the IC patient back, is this whole discussion about infection. For some of us, could our bladder and or different parts of our body, could we have a chronic infection? And this has been the hot debate for 25, 30, 40, 50 years. And up to 10 years ago, all of the existing testing available at the time, the typical urine cultures, the typical, all that, consistently did not find bacteria in IC patients. And so when you look at those old studies, what they're going to say is, if your urine cultures are negative, you would be diagnosed with IC. If your urine cultures are positive, you would be diagnosed with active infection instead, knowing that that's actually quite rare. But now, of course, we have next generation urine testing. Now we know that urine is not sterile. We know that the bladder is filled with an abundant, beautiful population of beneficial bacteria, as well as potentially some fungi and potentially some viruses. The bladder is not a sterile organ. And so, here, hold on. Yep. If one of you are calling, please leave a message. All right. So next generation testing was mind-blowing, right? Because it helped us understand this ecosystem of the urinary tract. It helped us understand why antibiotic therapy is so bad, because when you take a lot of antibiotics, you kill good stuff. And when you kill the good stuff, the bad bacteria have the potential of flourishing, causing all sorts of problems like C. diff in your bowel and all that sort of stuff. We also know, especially from this year, that we had more research presented at the American Urology Association, which showed that typical urine cultures, the ones that you and I have done dozens and dozens of times, are just not accurate. And they also argue too that dipstick tests also completely inaccurate. That they are not adept enough to identify many different species of bacteria. And don't quote me on this, but I think I remember a study which said typical urine cultures cannot identify 90% of the bacteria that have the potential of living in the bladder, and they certainly are not going to identify fungus. So here we have a research study that was also released in July, and it's called A New Look at the Etiology of Icy Bladder Pain, Extraordinary Cultivations. And this is done at Tufts University in Boston, as well as a university in Ankara, Turkey. And what they did instead is they took urine from IC patients, but they grew them on different mediums. So I wish I need I need an agar plate as a slide. So normally when you have a culture, there's a round petri dish, and inside that petri dish is some sort of growth medium that bacteria will eat and grow. And so what they do is they take a swab of your urine and they swab it on top of this agar. I mean, I did this for years. And what happens here is fascinating. That's how we see what grows. But what will grow will only be those things that will eat that medium, eat that agar. So in this research study, what they did is they used a whole bunch of different types of mediums. They used a typical broth. They used sheep blood agar. They used a dextrose solution. They used a couple of others. I don't know what they stand for. EMB, LEM, GYPA. They did broth cultures. They did others. They did all sorts of things. And what they found in these 26 IC patients and 20 controls, and this was a study done in 2017, half, not all, half of the IC patients, they found some interesting bacteria in them. They found Pseudomonas in 61%. They found Klebsiella in 15%. They found C. musificens, I'm not sure what that is. And they found Enterococcus in 7%. And then they did antibiotic susceptibility tests, yada, 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 whatever. The conclusion of this study was the use of extraordinary mediums with longer incubation periods may reveal a causative pathogen in some patients. Future culture techniques may have some value because still some IC patients are describing symptomatic relief with antibiotics. And that is true. Hey man, listen, there's going to be everybody listening to me right now, some of you feel better on antibiotics. And the way we used to explain that was that antibiotics had an anti-inflammatory effect. That's what we were told 20 years ago. But there is a growing movement here now to reinvestigate those patients who do better on antibiotics and to see if they can find an unusual, difficult to culture pathogen. And this is, again, when you ponder the subtypes of IC, from the Hunter's lesions to the chemical irritation to the pelvic floor to the nerve injury to genetics, which are all variants, it is undeniable that some patients, I think it's a small group of patients, it's certainly not the majority because we now think the majority are pelvic floor muscle injuries, but some of you do indeed have chronic infection of some type. The challenge is how to identify them. And that's where next generation testing shines because it will show you everything living in your bladder. It will show you good bacteria. It will show you bad bacteria. It will show you fungus. I was working with another patient. I think I got an email from her last night. Who? Gosh, let me see if I can find it. Hold on a sec. Oh, speaking of the devil, Elliot Lander just sent me an email. He says, hey, my paper just came out on stem cells for IC. He has no idea we were just talking about it. Let me see if I can find this email. So we had a patient who, no, it was an email. It was on the phone. She had a moderate candida infection, and then she had a parasite, and it was a parasite I'd never heard of. It was a protozoan parasite, a pretty significant one. And they were, she was really concerned about doing the treatment to kill the parasite because she hadn't traveled, but they did find a significant parasite in her bowel along with candida, and they do need to treat it. So we had a nice discussion about that. Pros and cons, my friends. My job is to try to help you understand the pros and cons and kick you in the butt, get you back to the doctor so that you can have a good discussion about this, right? Well, I don't give medical advice. You always have to understand, you don't get medical advice from these chats. I'm just trying to give you context. I'm trying to give you ammunition and information you can use as you go, and then, advocate for yourself with whoever you're treating. Whoever's treating you. All right, so that's the research. Pretty cool research, right? You should have no doubt about the state of the IC research world. Good research is happening, and I'll be going over these studies and more on Sunday during our live support group meeting on Sunday also. All right, man, let's go back and take some of your questions here. Hold on a sec. Let me check YouTube first because it's easier for me to see YouTube. Hi, Bernadine. Bernadine says, just started physical therapy 2 weeks ago, and she's having some hope for some relief. I think you have a typo in there, so I'm not sure if I'm interpreting what your comment is. Lisa was just asking where you can find these studies, and you can find them on pubmed.gov, pubmed.gov. That is the National Library of Medicine. Lisa says, the problem with microgen tests is that they're all over the place. Every time I do one, it's different. Hard to know how to interpret. That's very, very true. You can order next generation testing yourself. You don't even need a doctor's signature in about 25 states. But once you have the results, how the hell do you treat them? How do you interpret them, and how would you treat them? That's the difficulty here. There are some painfully obvious. If you come back with Klebsiella in a large amount, it's really obvious you have infection. They're going to be able to do that, use that. But if you come back with little bits of this, little bits of that, they don't know if that's normal or not. And that's why we need much more research to try to define next generation testing. Who is this? No. That is a telemarketer. You know what that call is? That is the robocall saying, this is an official call from the Social Security Administration. Your Social Security card has been compromised. If you please tell us what your Social Security number is, we will help you. Hello, con. They call a couple of times a day. It's ridiculous. All right, let's go up to Facebook now. I have to make this page much bigger here. Christy, I just got diagnosed with Epstein-Barr. How does it affect your bladder? And does anybody have any information on how to treat it? So, Christy, it was research presented last year at the American Urology Association in which they absolutely found the Epstein-Barr virus in the bladders of some patients with Hunner's lesions. And so what that study helps us understand is that viruses can travel throughout the body, and they can indeed arrive in the bladder and cause a viral infection of the bladder. And so we now have 2 viruses directly linked to Hunner's lesions. One is Epstein-Barr, the other is polyoma BK, as well as 2 viruses with a strong association. One is herpes, the other is HPV. And so in Europe, they do believe that the Epstein-Barr virus can trigger Hunter's lesions. Therefore, the right therapy would be some sort of antiviral. I will tell you that I emailed my contact, the International Painful Bladder Foundation, and said, so what do you do when you find a virus? And their answer was, well, we don't really know yet. Nobody's really studying that yet. So if you notice that your symptoms worsen, if you notice that you have blood in your urine, if you become much more diet sensitive, then it would be perfectly reasonable to take a look at your bladder and see if perchance you might have developed some lesions. And if you have, then you could talk to your doctor about the right way to treat them. Rebecca said she did the stem cell therapy and it helped temporarily. Good. Hey, Rebecca, if you would like to write up your experience with that, I would absolutely love to share your story in our magazine or in a blog on our website or in our patient newsletter. Hey guys, seriously, if you like these meetings, make sure you go over to the IC Network website and sign up for our free newsletter. I don't abuse it in any way. I don't sell it. We send out newsletters about once every 2 months, really relevant information. And that's where you're going to find really good future stories and patient stories. And Rebecca, I'd really love it if you could share your story with what that was like, how they harvested it for you, how they treated you, how your symptoms felt. Terry was told that her IC was all in her head, and she said she cried all the way home. He was actually a young doctor, so it really surprised me. So let me tell you an interesting story. Here in San Francisco, which is about 80 miles south of me, but it's our tertiary medical center where really difficult patients are referred. So I was referred to UC San Francisco. And the head of the UC San Francisco program at the time, urology department, did not believe that IC was real. Luckily, I didn't see him. I was sent to another doctor who did, thank God. Okay, so there was a patient who had been diagnosed by one of the top doctors. She lived on the East Coast, had moved on the West Coast, and she had a video of her hydrodistension showing her bladder covered with ulcers and lesions, right? So she goes to this new doctor, the head of the department at UC San Francisco. And again, this was like 20 years ago, guys. He's long retired. You don't need to worry about that. And he told her, he said, well, honey, you don't have IC. IC isn't a real disease. Stop worrying about it. You're fine. And so she's like literally in her car driving home, and she calls me and she goes, oh my God, Jill, you won't believe it. I don't have IC. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's odd. Okay, I love it. So are you feeling better? And she's like, no. And I said, do you still have all of your symptoms? She goes, yeah. And I said, well, who the hell cares what you call it? The point is you've got symptoms. So if they don't want to call it IC, fine. And I sent her back and I said, okay, you don't think it's IC, that's fine. But my problem is I'm still not sleeping through the night. I still have frequency urgency. What are we going to do about it? I don't care what you call it. What are we going to do for my symptoms? So Terry, I think that I would take the same tack with you with that. It's like, all right, then how do we explain these specific symptoms? And your ability to describe those symptoms is really important. And if you want to call me before that appointment, man, we can brainstorm some ideas on how to approach that, okay? Give you some good questions on that. Susan says, I asked my pain management doctor who does stem cell therapy. He said it would not be helpful for IC. So Susan, you're gonna show him this new study that was just released a week ago. Molly says, they say fibromyalgia and IBS are all in your head. Not so much anymore. Not so much anymore. But you have to understand that doctors are taught to diagnose by observation. They want to see something. It's like, They look in your bladder and they see a lesion or a wound. It's like, okay, you've got a wound. They look at my bladder. It's perfect. There's nothing wrong with the surface of my bladder. So is it all in my head? No, it's not. I have central sensitization. I'm IC subtype 5. I have super sensitive skin, super sensitive skin. I'm drug sensitive. I have a wicked sense of smell, like, anybody with central sensitization. So this is a unique group of IC patients. Teresa says, are painful bladder syndrome and IC the same thing? Yes, they are. So I can give you the nomenclature history. It's really, really interesting. So in 1987 in Europe and in America, everybody was diagnosed with IC. And that was a very interesting time in the IC world. There was a lot of arrogance in the IC world, a lot of researchers who looked down at other researchers. There was a lot of butting heads. There were a lot of doctors arguing over research funding, the little amount that there was. Everybody was trying to make their case for their specific condition. Their specific belief structure about IC. And I will tell you quite honestly that back then, the American research community was very arrogant, stunningly arrogant, to the point that they would go, one top doctor that I know, but I think this is very fair to say about the Americans back then, would go to conferences in other countries and kind of talk down to them and kind of say, do it our way, you're wasting time, yada, yada, yada. So what happened is we had a philosophical break between the Americans and the Europeans. The Europeans were not being respected to or listened to at all. And so they went, fine, if you don't want to listen to us, we will create our own IC group. And that is the European Society for the Study of IC. So here in the United States, it was IC. Now, in the Europeans, they got very bold very, very quickly. And they were the first to say, if you look at biopsy results, there's variety. They were the first to do typing, subtyping. In fact, they've got 12 variants of IC based on biopsy results. So using their system, only patients with Hunner's lesions are diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. Everybody else with symptoms but no lesions were diagnosed with painful bladder syndrome. And they brought this change to America at a research. I was there. I think it was in Orlando at an AUA meeting. And they pushed back very strongly against the Americans and said, you're wrong. This is a pain syndrome. So we're going to now call it painful bladder syndrome. And their argument was extremely compelling, to the point that the Americans started calling it IC/PBS. They gave the Americans a pounding, deserved a pounding. The Americans deserved it. But then a couple years later, they said, okay, we need to make this match other pain syndromes. So instead of calling it painful bladder syndrome, we're going to call it bladder pain syndrome, because you normally name the organ first. So that's when bladder pain syndrome started to be used instead of painful bladder syndrome. So then the initials were ICBPS, ICBPS. And in America, everybody's diagnosed with ICBPS. In Europe, IC is confined to Hunner's lesions. Everybody else is confined to bladder pain syndrome. What's even more interesting is the approach that the Asians did, that the Japanese did, because they, instead of calling it bladder pain syndrome, they decided to call it hypersensitive bladder syndrome, HBS. And honestly, they're the ones who probably got it correct. So in their system, IC combined to Hunner's lesions, anybody without lesions are diagnosed with hypersensitive bladder syndrome, unless that's changed recently. And I think I just saw something in the last couple of weeks about something changing yet again. Okay, so there's a little history for you. So the answer is yes, they're the same. However, in Europe, It's based upon pathological findings in the United States. They're considered the same. Heidi says, does anybody ever come off a disability? The answer is absolutely. Yeah, I did. I was out on disability for a year. Started working again. You got to remember there's 4 different types of disability. You've got private insurance that your employer might be paying for. You've got state disability insurance. State disability insurance is max 1 year. It is designed to get you back to work. It is the insurance you use if you're in a car accident or you break your hip or you have a baby or whatever. The intention of state disability insurance is to keep you working. It is just a transition through a hard time. They want you back to work. And the nice thing about state disability insurance is while you're getting your benefits, you can indeed go back to work while you're getting benefits. You have to report those. Federal disability has a completely different perspective. Federal disability assumes that you cannot work again. That the likelihood of you not being able to return to work is low. And so Social Security disabilities, you have to pay into the system for about 10 years to be eligible to receive Social Security disability. You must have a doctor who confirms that your IC is so severe that you cannot function normally or do a normal job. Remember that with disability, they look at, quote unquote, your ability to perform the essential functions of your job. Can you drive to work? Can you sit at a desk? Can you sit through a meeting without having to get up and go to a restroom? So they kind of look at your functional abilities as well. So as an example, if you worked in a warehouse at Costco that involved lifting heavy things and you've got pelvic floor dysfunction, that's absolutely not going to work. Whereas if you got pelvic floor dysfunction but work in an office, that might not be quite as obvious unless you discuss how painful sitting is, that you cannot sit for a long period of time. Like me, I have trouble sitting for a long period of time. All right, somebody's talking about CBD, but it went by too fast. Hold on, can I scroll back? I cannot scroll back. Some research came out earlier this year showing that a lot of CBD out there is pretty contaminated. And so it's really important that you get a really good brand with good testing results. I would tell you, we have we do have this in our store, Hemp Max, which is a CBD based product that if you want to try it, you can try it. It's from Douglas Laboratories. Very, very credible. They make Sister Renew. Okay, clearly I'm missing a really important discussion on Facebook. It's gone by too quick. What was the substance they wanted to freeze it with? I'm curious. Donna says, Florida just passed medical marijuana. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. Hey, I mean, guys, seriously, I'm a nerd. I'm a scientist. I like research. But if there's an enemy in this entire situation, it's pain. It's pain. And with so many patients now being thrown off of their pain medicine, I think it's really important that you have options, and medical marijuana is an option, and I support that. The real enemy here is suffering. I mean, my first year with IC, I didn't sleep through. I was just telling a family friend who was here that literally my entire first year with IC, I laid on my living room floor at night crying because I had to pee every 20 minutes until I was diagnosed properly and got some help. And somebody taught me not to drink cranberry juice, which I was drinking a quart of cranberry juice a day, not having a clue. It's killing my bladder, and that's why I wasn't sleeping. So I'm really happy for Florida. That's good, because Florida, you guys don't have a lot of resources in Florida, which is really surprising. So it's really, really good that at least you've got that. If you ever go to a dispensary, you just got to understand that the salespeople that you might be working with are not doctors. they're relying on personal experience in many cases. You absolutely want testing results before you buy anything. You want to make sure it's not contaminated with any pesticides, any fungicides, or any other toxic substances. I've talked about that in past lectures. It's common. We had a guy in Southern California who had a really, really bad back injury, and he'd been using medical marijuana for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden, with his latest batch of medical marijuana, he got violently ill. And it's like, what the heck is that? He was very, very ill, and he felt like he was being poisoned. So much so that he decided to send his medical marijuana to a lab, and it was poisoned. It was filled with pesticides, toxic levels of pesticides. So he took the lab results to a local TV station. And the local TV station down there then went to a whole bunch of dispensaries and bought a whole bunch of different brands, including brands labeled organic. And pretty much all of them had chemical contamination, pesticide contamination, including the organics. There were some that weren't. And so that really raised awareness here in California that an important part of getting this legalized is now getting it regulated and tested properly, because he was being poisoned. And something just came out in the last 10 days to 2 weeks that talked about CBD products contaminated. So you as a customer have got to be really strong here. If you walk in and you say, can I please see the testing results? And if they don't have them, you do not buy that product. And if they say, hey, it's on the website, then you pull out your cell phone and you look at it on the website before you buy it. It's just your life is at stake. We don't want you to get worse. Hello, Daisy from the UK. Nice to see you. So I think so far we have the United Kingdom here. I think we have New Zealand here so far. Erin says, my back always hurts. I feel pressure in my bladder and tight muscles. So Erin, I would bet you that your back pain's from your psoas muscles. Your psoas muscles go from low to high. They start in your pelvis and they go up both sides of your back. They're very ropey. They're thick and ropey muscles. And they are kind of notorious for getting tight and causing back pain. Kim wants to know, where do you do next generation testing? I built a website on it a year ago, bladderhealth.org, bladderhealth.org. Hold on, let me get my slides. I didn't even pull out my slides. Really? Oh, alrighty then, let me see. Here it is. All right. If you want to learn more about next generation testing, go to bladderhealth.org. Bladderhealth.org. All right. Let us keep going. All right. Hey, man, come on, stump me. You guys, give me a tough question. So Facebook, our people on Facebook are having a big discussion about antibiotics and the placebo effect. Rebecca, is there a long-term treatment for pelvic floor issues with nerves and muscles? Exercise is a major trigger, and though it helps, it isn't a cure. So there are a lot of different ways that they can approach it. But ultimately, in the end, you've got to understand that muscles require muscle work. And for many of us, we have had long-standing muscle problems for years. We just didn't know it. You might have had a baby 20 years ago where your muscles were traumatized, or you might have been a gymnast in your teenage years and sustained a major injury. Or for guys, you might have been a football player and you took a couple of hard shots to your pelvis. You really have no clue that you've got weak dysfunctional muscles until finally you go through frequency urgency, and then eventually get diagnosed. So you've got years worth of dysfunction to repair. And the big thing about pelvic floor is you got to stick with it. This is not something that's going to get fixed in 6 appointments. If you've had long-standing dysfunction like I've had, you're going to be doing muscle work for a long time because you should feel better when you do your stretching. I did a lot of stretching yesterday and I did stretching this morning. And what's really working for me right now is the foam roller. I have a lot of fascia pain on the left side of my pelvis or on my glute. But if you've got resistant trigger points, then they can do Botox into the trigger point. They can do dry needling into the trigger point. And some would argue that neuromodulation might help by calming those nerves down that are triggering some of that muscle tension. I don't understand that. And I don't even know. Let me see if I have my cheat sheet from the Chris Payne subtyping system. Does he even mention that for IC subtype 3? I do not even. Where is my cheat sheet? Is it here? Oh, well, I can't find it. I certainly, if you're pondering doing something dramatic, like saying, hey, doc, can you just do surgery and make it better? I would caution you about that. That ultimately, in the end, muscle dysfunction requires muscle work. And if you cannot afford physical therapy, if you can just go once so that they can identify the muscle group, so that you know what you're dealing with here, then you can come back. You can get some of the books that we have, Ending Female Pelvic Pain, Ending Male Pelvic Pain, Healing Pelvic Pain, and you can do the exercises in the book, which is what I did yesterday and this morning. I just wanted to change it up because what I was doing wasn't quite working. And they gave me some new things to do with the foam roller, and it really made a difference. Malia says, I was recently diagnosed with IC, so this is all new to me. I have a history of recurrent UTI. How do I know if I'm having a flare-up or if you're having a UTI? Well, if you're having an acute UTI, which is a very severe UTI, you're probably going to have fever and you're probably going to have a lot of urethral burning that a typical bladder wall IC flare does not cause. IC does not cause fever in general. IC usually does not cause urethral burning during a flare. What we have, Malia, is pain as your bladder fills with urine that is relieved by urination. So the fuller you get, the worse you feel. But then when you urinate and you empty your bladder, you feel better. And let me explain that. I have a good picture. So Malia, let me show you 2 pictures of a bladder. So these are pictures of Hunner's lesions. Now, there are mixed statistics. I mean, the early research was basically 5 to 10% of patients had Hunner's lesions. So these are big, basically bloody wounds on the bladder wall. They tend to have a center point, and then they tend to have arms reaching out. So this is the epitome of a wound, right? And while the triggers for Hunner's lesions are still unclear, we now believe that for some people, they're viral infections. That's what the new research out of Europe is with this. This actually could be a viral infection of a bladder wall. But think about it. If you've got a wound on your bladder and then you've got urine, your bladder's filling up and it's going into the wound, of course you're going to feel worse as your bladder gets fuller. And then as soon as you empty your bladder, bam, there's no longer urine on the wound, you feel better. So the hallmark symptom of somebody with a bladder wall injury is pain as your bladder fills with urine that is relieved by urination. This is a picture more of an injured bladder. So we call these petechial hemorrhages or glomurulations. This is much more common than this. You can just see on the surface how different these are, right? These are big bloody wounds. These are a lot of little red spots, right? But it's the same principle here. I mean, if you got a red spot, that means that there's a wound or trauma there of some type, a superficial wound, kind of like a skin knee for some people. As your bladder gets fuller and fuller and fuller, bam, the urine is going into the wound. It's going to hurt. So if you're running to the restroom to relieve pain, then that's a really classic symptom of somebody with an injured bladder wall. Now, but a lot of you don't have pain as your bladder fills with urine. A lot of you have pain after you're done peeing. It's like I mean, you're you got to pee, but you dread peeing because as soon as you're done peeing, you're going to be bending over in agony because something's really, really sharp and painful there. That tends to be a pelvic floor spasm or a bladder wall muscle spasm. So we've got bladder wall issues and pelvic floor issues, okay? Along with a lot of other things. Malia, I don't know how long you've been in here, but when we're done, the video is going to be here, and I really want you to come back and watch the first 30 minutes because they're talking about all the different things that can cause these symptoms. Somebody asked, what kinds of things do pelvic floor physical therapists do? So let me demonstrate. Hold on. All right. I was just at my pelvic floor physical therapist last week because we are trying to deal with adhesions along the left side of my pelvis from surgery. Okay, so remember, your pelvic floor is like a web of muscles. You've got muscles that go from left to right. You've got muscles that go from front to back. And you've got muscles like your psoas muscle that go from low to high. And they're all kind of interwoven. One of the ways that they're kind of woven is with depth. So a good way to think about this are layers. So your finger has three clear knuckles, right? Okay, so you got your base knuckle, you've got your middle knuckle, and your top knuckle. Each one of those corresponds with a layer of muscles in the pelvic floor. So when you go to the pelvic floor physical therapist, they're going to use a finger and they're going to start low and they're going to touch muscles, right? On both sides, left side, right side, front, back. Then they're going to go up to the middle level muscles. Same thing. They're going to go low. They're going to left, right. They're looking for tender spots. And then, depending upon how long their finger is, they're going to try to go up to the muscles, if you're a woman, up by your cervix. And they're going to touch those muscles, low to high, left side to right side, front to back. And their job at that first appointment is to find the pain source. So you should never fear going to the pelvic floor physical therapist, nor should you fear pain. Because if they can touch it and trigger your pain, hallelujah, baby, we found it. We found it. And that's huge. So for me, okay, let's see, I don't even know how to do this. Okay, let's just pretend this is a vagina. Okay, right? So for me, we are working on the left side, which to you is the right side. Okay, but anyway, because I have surgical adhesions on my left side from a hysterectomy that kind of went wrong. And so from a physical therapy standpoint, what she's having me do is, because I'm telling you, these adhesions are a beast and they hurt like hell if they get messed up. So I'm pushing for 5 seconds deep, mid-level, shallow. Same, there's deep, mid-level, shallow. And then we're just doing other things and your physical therapist can kind of help you and teach you how you should be doing it. But then the question then is, how do you do it at home? And the answer is you do it at home with a glass wand. And here's a sample glass wand. And using this, you can reach deeper. But it's, you got to get used to it. If you remember, listen, if you got a muscle knot on your back, what do? You have a family member or friend push on it, because when you push on it, it breaks it up. So pushing on a muscle knot is important. What do you do if you have a muscle knot up by your cervix? Use a glass wand and you push on it. Okay. Sandy says, I'm intolerant to hemp, took a blood test, and my nutritionist told me to avoid medical marijuana. So Sandy, then in your case, I think the other thing that would be very interesting to try would be the Piora, the palmitoethanolamide. Remember that, again, at the American Urology Association conference, we had our first research study with Icy and PEA and resveratrol, and the research results were stunningly good. That when patients were taking a PEA resveratrol combination at 3 months, 87% of patients were symptom-free, and at 6 months, every single patient in the study had a significant. Oh no! Wait, hold on. I quoted that wrong. At 3 months, 87% of patients had a significant reduction in their pain. At 6 months, every single patient in the IC study had a significant reduction in their pain, and 25% were pain-free. This was using a European formula of PEA and resveratrol. Piora is the American version of that formula, slightly redone, because obviously they can't copy that formula. But it is the American company's attempt to create a product that might help you with pain. And it's $29, and you can get that from the IC Network. This was part of a big project that we'd all been working on for a year, now longer than that. So we have three new products. The big product first was Bladder Builder. This was a year's worth of discussion with a small team of people trying to come up with a new formula that we thought might help the bladder, but also help systemically. So this has the chondroitin, the hyaluronate, the quercetin for the bladder. It's got collagen for the bladder. It's got some beneficial probiotics, but it also has PEA in it. It doesn't have the resveratrol, but it has the PEA in it. And so this is the first bladder supplement out on the market that actually contains this pain-fighting ingredient. And the irony here is, as we were all working on it, because I was part of that team, we had no idea the Italian PEA IC study was happening. I had no clue that was happening until I read the program research abstracts 2 weeks before the conference. And I saw this study on PEA and IC, and I was like, oh my God, who knew? And we went back to the manufacturer and to the researchers that were working on it and said, look at this brand new study. So that's why PEA got put into Bladder Builder. The results with this are really good. However, for those of you who are sensitive to probiotics and have flares with probiotics, this is not the product for you. Or if you're somebody who's just extremely sensitive to a lot of stuff, definitely maybe not do this one first. And of course, the rule of thumb is if you're reacting to anything, obviously stop and talk with your doctor. Of course, talk with your doctor about these options. The top IC researcher in the country has been helping with these, Dr. Ken Peters. And so he's got patients that are using these now. People have been using this for about 4 months now. So, but some patients have had diarrhea from it. And so we want to, got to be. In fact, I'm going to be sending emails out to everybody who's bought these to ask for feedback. The next formula that we have is Bladder Rest, and Bladder Rest is an option for Cystoprotect. because Cysto Protect came out with a cancer warning. So this is a clean, simple formula for the bladder wall. A lot of you love it. You feel like it's a better formula, and some of you like the Cysto Protect better. I had a meeting with Mylan Pharmaceuticals today. We hopefully will have Cysto Protect back in 2 to 3 months, reformulated. So in the meantime, you've got Bladder Rest, and quite a few of you are going to stay on Bladder Rest because it's cheaper. But some of you are looking forward to getting the Cysto Protect back. And of course, then the last supplement here is the Piora, which again is very exciting. That Icy study showed no significant side effects. I think I had one person who upset her stomach, maybe, out of the 1,000 patients who are trying this right now. So I'd really love your feedback on these, okay? Tell me what you think. So Malia, there is a 6-step treatment protocol for IC published by the American Urology Association. The steps are arranged with respect to the risk of adverse event. So we don't want you to do surgery before you do the easy stuff. So in step 1 is the easy stuff: diet modification, muscle relaxation, acupuncture, and supplements. And if you don't have good success with the supplements, then you go to step 2, which are some of the traditional bladder installations, oral medications. And I was told by one person that the AUA guidelines were being redone. I'm not involved with that. I don't have an update on that. I would love to be involved with that, though. Tanya is from Florida, getting ready for the hurricane. I'm so sorry, hon. Cheryl says, what are the side effects of azo long-term? I think it's either liver damage or kidney damage. Azo is not meant to be used on a daily basis, so it's one or the other. Ask your doctor or go talk to the pharmacist about it. Christine asks, has anybody had success with low-dose naltrexone? Christine, that is not a common therapy. We don't have a lot of stories on that. Sahar says, my left pelvic floor is really weak. I just understood it in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, it sucks. You know what they say is if you're right-handed, the odds are it's going to be your left side that's going to be tight. And if you're left-handed, your right side's going to be tight. And I think that's because when we walk or when we play a sport and you're right-handed, you step in with your left foot and you put your weight on your left foot and your left hip and your left pelvic floor. I could be wrong, but that's what I was told. Sabrina says, I do a big week diet and it's helped a whole lot with the burning. Awesome, girl. Awesome. Power to you. Julia says, is there an alternative medication to pyridium? There was one, well, you got Cystax, which is over the counter, but acts in a different way, not meant to be used long-term either. I think there was one other, I don't remember the name. I just don't remember the name. I'm sorry. Hello, memo pause, as I call it, memory pause. Sahar says, I use BioWave on your back and it helps feel relief. Good. Awesome. I'd like to hear more about that. I don't know anything about that. Angela, thank you. Urabelle. Thank you. It's Urabelle. Sue, just had some muscle work today, having a major flare of my pudendal nerve. Don't know if I should stretch while in the flare, do it my home therapy. Haven't gotten a call back. You know, Sue, I got to tell you, both after my surgery, as well as it had been 2 years since I'd done it, and my adhesions had gotten really bad. And so I cried on the way home 10 days ago when we did it again. It's like, holy, and it's so weird that when you're doing it, you can like stand it. I mean, she's touching inside of you and she's looking at your face, trying to figure out if it hurts or not. And I don't know if it's our natural inclination to try to hide that it might be hurting. Um, but, I mean, like, I can take it when she's doing it, but it's when I sit down in my car that I just kind of like go, oh my God, oh, this feels hard, right? You're just like, I just, and like it takes like 3 visits for me to the physical therapist before I don't cry and they nip it, they get it calmed down. So, kind of, Sue, I will tell you for me, usually if I get to the point where I'm crying in the car because it hurt when I sat down and it's just throbbing, I come home, I take a muscle relaxant, I grab a heating pad, sit in the recliner for several hours, and just I try not to do anything to it. I just want things to relax. And since you feel that your nerve is involved, rather than using heat, you might do better with ice. I mean, definitely find out from your therapist what you should do. Oh, this is interesting. Cheryl says she had neuromodulation with Medtronic 12 years ago. Unfortunately, there was no success. But 2 years ago, you had another implant and you had a partial success for the neuropathy that you believed was connected to your IC. So that's good to hear, hun. That's really, really good to hear that here you had intensive nerve pain and the neuromodulation helped. And that's why kind of neuromodulation is one of the treatment options for IC subtype 4 and 5. IC subtype 4, pudendal neuralgia, IC subtype 5, central sensitization. That's really where we're going to see neuromodulation be more helpful. Emily says eliminating high foods and oxalates really help with the pain. So oxalates are chemicals that come in certain foods that they're crystals, and they can be remarkably painful, especially in people with vulvodynia. So if you ever have kidney stones, they're usually calcium oxalate kidney stones. And a lot of patients are really surprised to discover that in your urine, there are chemicals that crystallize, especially overnight. They settle at the bottom of your bladder. And then in the morning, the first time you pee, you're peeing out kind of a thick, viscous soup of whatever is assembled at the bottom of your bladder overnight, or the backside of your bladder if you're laying on your back. So oxalates are kind of sharp crystals that can irritate the bladder wall or they can irritate the vulva. And so many patients do well by eliminating foods that are high in oxalates. My mom is one of them. Oxalates kill her. They don't bother me so much, but they kill her. And so she doesn't eat spinach, although I don't eat spinach either. She doesn't eat strawberries. She doesn't eat chocolate and other foods that are high in oxalates. And it helps her with her vulvodynia. And if you have A Taste of the Good Life, a cookbook for an Icy Diet by Bev Lauman, she talked about that 20 years ago, and all of her recipes have oxalate levels in them. Unfortunately, the book is out of print right now. I'm hoping that we will get it. Okay, hold on. If you're wondering why I'm bouncing, I'm sitting on my yoga ball because my pelvic floor is unhappy. Darlene says it burns more after you urinate. So the question, Darlene, is where? Are you burning on your skin or are you burning inside? If you're burning on your skin, it's probably estrogen atrophy. If you're burning inside, like in your vagina, then it's probably pelvic floor spasm. That burning is often a symptom of tight pelvic floor muscles. Bernadine says, which supplement has aloe vera in it? Bladder Builder or Bladder Relief? None of them. The supplement that has aloe vera in it is Cysto Renew, which you can also get in our store. The reason why we didn't put Cysto Renew in the reason why we didn't put aloe in these is because a lot of people are aloe intolerant. So we wanted to kind of simplify it as much as we could. That was the intention of the manufacturer, Natural Approach Nutrition, and that was my suggestion to them. I kept saying, more is not better. Just take stuff out because people are sensitive. Rubina, I had an E. coli infection, took antibiotics, still have some symptoms. So Rubina, E. coli, I will tell you, in fact, E. coli is remarkably adept at defeating itself. I mean, defeating antibiotics. What it does is it changes shape in the presence of some antibiotics. And so normally an E. coli is kind of round like this, kind of round like that. And in some environments, when it's exposed to a threat, it changes shape to a noodle. And when it becomes that noodle, white blood cells, your body's warriors, cannot identify it. There's a lot of different things going on with E. coli right now. And hold on a sec. I just read an article. Let me see if I can find this. Hold on a sec. The best researcher in the country for E. coli is a guy named Scott Holtgren. And there was a new study or paper that just came out. Oh man, I gotta find this. It was so interesting. Hold on. Here it is. Here it is. This is from, oh yeah, this is cool. Oh God, see, I gotta get the streaming software up so that you can see the pictures. Let me print I want to see if I can print out this picture. This is a picture of an E. coli infection in the bladder wall. Hold on a sec. Let me see if I can print this. It's fascinating. This is such a great picture. Here, hold on. You're gonna love this. Okay, here, hold on. Oh wait, come on. Release the article. Release it. Come on, computer. Turn on your printer again. What? Okay, well, it almost worked. All right. So, okay. This is cool. Scott Holmgren was one of the first to use electron microscopy to study what active infections do in the bladder. And here is an incredible picture. Okay, so this is a bladder that is infected with E. coli. So remember that three-dimensionally, you got three layers. You've got a top layer of mucus, then you've got 4 to 5 layers of urothelial cells, and then underneath that, you got nerves and blood vessels, right? So if a bacteria gets in and gets through the mucus down to the epithelial cell or the urothelial cells, what happens? So what's really cool, let me, here, darn it. Okay, so look at this cell right here. Do you see how these are hexagons? This is what a normal urothelium looks like. They're the biggest cells in the human body, and they have something called tight junctions so that things cannot get through them. They're really interconnected. Okay, but what happens when you have a bladder infection? So look, here is a cell that is infected with bacteria. So here's an infection, there's infection, and look at right here. So this is actually, the bacteria has actually already killed the cell in the middle. So here's a perfect example of a hole in your bladder wall, right? The bacteria have turned the cell that used to be here into a bacteria factory. It then ruptures, lets all the bacteria out, and we're left without a cell. And bacteria tunnel. They tunnel. So they start at the surface cell, they kill the surface cell, then they go to the next cell, and they kill those, and they go to the next one. And then, of course, all these bacteria can then reach other cells, right? So here's a big infection. Here's a big infection. Cells that are just starting to get infected. And then you can see damage. You can already see there's no tight junctions here, right? Isn't that cool? That is so freaking cool. I've never seen a picture like this before. And this was actually a mouse bladder that was infected. So in this study, this is from the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. What they were trying to figure out why some women and men are, once you have an infection, you're more prone to infection. So let me just read the first couple of paragraphs of this. It's fascinating. Rubina, fascinating. More than 60% of women will experience a urinary tract infection at some point in their lives, and about a quarter will get a second such infection within 6 months for reasons that have been unclear to health experts. Now, researchers at the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis have discovered that an initial infection can set the tone for subsequent infections. In mouse studies, the researchers found that a transient infection, triggers a short-lived inflammatory response that rapidly eliminates the bacteria. But if the initial infection lingers for weeks, the inflammation also persists, leading to long-lasting changes to the bladder that prime the immune system to overreact to the next time bacteria find their way into the urinary tract, thus worsening the infection. These findings suggest that reversing these changes to the bladder may help prevent or mitigate future infections. Isn't that fascinating? I think the bladder is so, I mean, listen, when I went to school, I never thought I'd be talking about the bladder, but seriously, it's one of the most interesting organs in the human body. You know, that you go from something like this clean, simple, perfect cells working together, to infection like that. It's really fascinating. Get your geek on, my friends. Get your geek on. You can be a bladder geek like me. Yeah, Malia says, hey, that's my bladder in the picture. Oh, you were talking about the 100 lesion pictures. I'm about 200 comments behind on Facebook right now. Lisa, what do you do? Lisa asks, what do you do for burning on the skin after you pee? Number one, you always rinse your skin before you wipe with toilet paper. Rinse yourself off with water first with a peri bottle. Then pat a little bit dry with a piece of toilet paper or two. And then you could use aloe gel. You could use a lidocaine cream. You could use coconut oil, something that will either numb the nerves or soothe the nerves. And you can talk to your doctor about a compounded lidocaine cream. Sometimes they can make a compounded lidocaine estrogen cream, which is what I'm using right now. Or they can do a ketamine baclofen lidocaine cream. There are all sorts of different creams that might be helpful for the vulva when you're irritated. And I discussed that on the IC Network website, somewhere on that giant website. Connie says, I don't have email to be sent to send you my dress, but can you get a free sample of aloe? I don't have any free samples of aloe, I'm sorry to say. Also waiting for a call back from you. All right, okay. I thought I was up to date on all my phone calls, although I haven't checked my phone messages today. So Connie, call me tomorrow and refresh my memory. I apologize if you left a message and I missed it. So Sahar says, for me, your physical therapist could not find any tight muscles. It turned out your muscles are very weak and I have an inflamed nerve. Mine are weak in certain spots and tight in other spots. But that's important too. You know, normally when you've got tightness, you've got some weakness. And then the tightness is because the muscles are overcompensating. But fundamentally, there's usually weakness throughout the pelvic floor or in certain spots of the pelvic floor. And so not only are you going to do things that will release tight muscles, but then you've got to strengthen those muscles. It's about building the strength and healthy functioning in those muscles back. So it's kind of a two-step process, releasing tight muscles, then strengthening those muscles. So somebody's recommending the Thera wand. I think the Thera. Hold on a sec. I think the Thera wand is made of acrylic and has. Hold on, let me look it up. There are problems with using acrylic. Hold on. You definitely want to use a glass wand. Yeah, that's a problem. So the Thera wand is made of acrylic. And so there's some concern that the plastics that are used to make the Thera wand could leach some chemicals into you, whereas the glass wand by Icy Relief will not do that. So we don't recommend the acrylic wands like Thera wand. We go for the glass wands instead. Linda says, I saw a new urogynecologist. My problem is severe urethral pain. When I touch my lower abdomen, I feel the pain in your urethra. She said it was probably nerve pain. She prescribed Lyrica. Have you ever heard of this? Linda, I've got a really good blog on our website called The 7 Causes of Urethral Pain. There are many different things that can cause urethral pain. The most common I'm going to say right now is usually estrogen atrophy. That the urethra is usually the canary in the coal mine when it comes to estrogen levels, because both the urethra and the bladder, as well as the vulva and the vagina, rely on estrogen to produce mucus. And when you are older, when you're perimenopausal or you've had a hysterectomy, you don't have the estrogen levels as much. So what happens is your mucosal barrier gets thinner. Thus, that skin cannot defend itself as well. And so for many patients, the bottom half of the urethra starts screaming in pain because it doesn't have as much mucus as it should have. And that happened to me when I was 51. And the treatment that I was given was a little bit of estrogen cream. It worked like a charm. Within a week, after 3 months of suffering with urethral pain, just took a couple of doses of estrogen cream to make that go away. But Linda, go on over to our website and search for the 7 causes of urethral pain and search for that blog. I think you'll find it very helpful. And you're welcome to call me if you want to talk about it. Connie says, I no longer have a lining on the inside of your bladder. So doing something that provides a protective coating would be really important for you, right, Connie? Because if you don't have that nice thick mucosal barrier, Is there any idea why? And is it just part of your bladder or your whole bladder? It's very unusual for it to be your whole bladder. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl says, as chronic IC sufferer for the past 20 years, I'm so happy I stumbled on this live podcast. Happy to help. Connie, I'm going to write your name down here. I'm going to put you on my list to call. The question is do I have your... If you could private message me your phone number, that would be awesome. I do not see you on my... Unless you signed up for coaching, and maybe I just haven't gotten the email for that yet. But hey, man, just if you use Facebook, I'm Jill Heidi Osborne on Facebook. Send me a message, okay? Or call me. Call me tomorrow. You can get my phone number right from our website, icnetwork.org. The challenge with Lyrica is something called a discontinuation syndrome. Cymbalta does the same thing. Zyrtec does the same thing. So, let's see. So basically, there are some medications that even over-the-counter medications like Zyrtec, that if you take them for a long period of time, your body kind of adapts to the presence of that medication. And also your body starts to get, one of the things that happens is your body gets better and better at breaking up a medication or metabolizing a medication, which is why you might need more over time. You might need to increase your dose. It's just because your body, the more it's exposed to it, the better your liver gets at getting rid of it. But both Lyrica and Zyrtec and Cymbalta are well known to cause pretty severe withdrawal symptoms. And for some patients, that can be an extended withdrawal period for several months of, I kid you not, hallucinations. Or I just did something on Cymbalta, a shocking feeling. She said it was like they say it's like an electric shock going up your spinal cord to your brain. They call it brain zaps. That's part of a discontinuation syndrome for one of the medications. It wasn't Lyrica, but just understand that getting onto it is easy. Getting off of it, if you decide that you're going to take it for a long period of time, takes some real planning and discussion with your doctor, because you cannot cold turkey it without going through some really severe withdrawal effects. Okay. Charlene, have I had any feedback from people using PEA? Yeah, I've had really good feedback so far, but I'm going to send out email to everybody who's bought it because I want to get more. I haven't had, it's so hard doing a product launch, because you have to give it a period of time to really know. PEA has only been out. This has only been out for about 2 months now. So I don't have any horror stories to share, people who've had bad reactions from it. I did have one person who thought it raised her blood pressure, and I think she's here on YouTube. I don't want to say her name. And there were a couple of other reactions, but it was hard to say that it was exactly from the supplement. I think there were other supplements involved. Hey, girl, you know who I'm talking to. Straighten me out and tell me what it was, okay? That's my memory, and along with a couple of hours of talking. Okay, I'm glad. been giving out PEA bottles as free samples, but I'm now out. I only have one bottle left, guys. One bottle left here in my office. Teresa says, how long before Peora works? Well, the research study found at 3 months, 87% of patients had a significant reduction in pain. So we're thinking 3 months. Connie says, I took Elmeron for years and it didn't help. Honey, Elmeron doesn't help a lot of people. A lot of people. And now we know that Elmeron is associated with some eye issues. So if you're having any change of vision, if you're noticing that it's getting hard to see in low light, fuzzy vision, blind spots, we now know that Elmeron can actually, part of it can be deposited on the retina and cause something called pigmentary maculopathy. We learned that exactly a year ago. It was exactly a year ago this weekend that I found the study, the letter to the editor in the Journal of Urology, and ended up breaking the story, which has now become the biggest story of 2000 of the last year by far. Is this tragic news that Elmeron is now linked to some retinal damage and eye damage. Gigi says, I'm going to see an acupuncturist tomorrow at Kaiser San Francisco for your IC and PFD. Good luck. Hey, man, I'm working with a Kaiser pelvic pain specialist down in San Francisco right now. She's pretty nice. Malia says you're doing installations right now and you're on Elmeron. So installations, if it's an Elmeron installation, is considered safe because the Elmeron does not penetrate deeply into the body. But taking Elmeron by mouth now for an extended period of time has now been linked to some eye issues. So you want to read about that on our website, hon. Many patients have chosen not to do Elmeron. Number one, because it's very expensive. Number two, because it's already notorious for causing side effects. But number three, now to protect their eyesight. Hello, Lindsay. Tanya, 14 years with IC. Heather says, does everyone's bladder shrink? I can barely hold anything. Well, I mean, there's two different processes that could be involved there. Number one is if your bladder is scarred and stiff, then it does get smaller because, you know, your bladder is a hollow organ that expands. So normally it's very small, and then as it fills with urine, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when you pee, it gets small again, right? One of the things that impacts its ability to hold urine is scarring. So if you, for example, you had a ton of UTIs and they scarred your bladder, or if you've had Hunter's lesions and they've lasered your bladder, that could have left scar tissue. So your bladder literally can only open a little tiny bit, right? But the other thing that could be influencing how that you can't hold much are your nerves. And I gave this example earlier. We were talking about this earlier, that I personally have a very healthy bladder. You look at my bladder, it's normal, but my nerves are not normal. I have central sensitization, IC subtype 5. And so my nerves get turned on more easily. So you take a healthy person, you could put hundreds of cc's of water in their bladder and they can walk around for hours and they don't feel it. You put 100 cc's of water in my bladder, I'm going to feel it and want to pee. The difference is that my nerves are more sensitive. They're easier to turn on. So you might have this sensation that your bladder has shrunk when it's actually hasn't shrunk. It's just your nerves are making it feel like you're full. I don't know. I mean, you have to ask your doctor if you've got scar tissue or not in your bladder. For some patients, unfortunately, their bladder can shrink because of repeated infection scarring. So it can go from kind of the size of, I don't know if I can give a fruit, a grapefruit when it's full, to the size of a walnut. Angela, is there an antacid that's bladder friendly? I use Gaviscon. I really like Gaviscon. Never had a problem with it. The challenge with Tums is there tend to be a lot of flavoring, preservatives, artificial sugars in it, whereas Gaviscon, I don't think there are. But usually antacids help. They don't hurt as much unless they've got a lot of artificial, sugar and flavorings in them. Molly, I'm in so much pain right now. You're crying. Oh, Molly. I'm so sorry. It came on after I did too much walking. I see the pain clinic on Friday. I have to go grocery shopping and pay my rent, yet everything is burning, spasming, hurting. I can barely walk around my apartment. All right. So Molly, our first goal here is to try to figure out so your pain was triggered when you did too much walking. So the assumption here is that you're having a pelvic floor spasm because when you move, that would trigger a pain. So you gotta focus on relaxing those muscles. I would take a hot bath or a hot shower. If you have a muscle relaxant, would use a little bit of muscle relaxant and see if you can get that muscle spasm to stop, hun. And if it's so bad that you're screaming and crying, girl, you got to call the emergency room. Get yourself into the doctor. Listen, the rule is anytime you're scared, anytime you're in agony and you can't hold it together, you got to ask for help. And that means that you might need to run down to urgent care, run down to the emergency room and see if they will give you something that will help break those spasms. And also do an appropriate workup to make sure you don't have infection or something else going on, hun. So call your doctor, call the doctor that's on call and let them know what's going on and see what they would recommend that you would do. And of course, using a heating pad, taking a warm shower, see if that'll help a little bit too to get yourself through it, okay? But call your doctor. You might have, and if you're, they might be able to prescribe you an antispasmodic. And antispasmodics for bladder spasms can be, they can work really quickly, like within 30 minutes. So call your doctor right now. Ask for help. Darlene said, Jill, is your mom feeling better? Yes, she is. She is. The cellulitis is gone. Praise God. Hallelujah. When I took her to her primary care, this is after the emergency room, after urgent care, and we finally got to her primary care like 3 days later. He was like, yeah, man, I've been treating a lot of cellulitis this year from mosquito bites. Like, what's going on this year? It's crazy. Hello, Austin, Texas. Hi, Susan. Lisa, any new information affecting eyes? Let me take a search. Our last study was presented in May. That's the last one, but let me take a look. I can't wait to screen share so that I can show you guys where I get my info, because you don't need me to do this. You can do this yourself. So hold on. Pelvic floor spasm for me right now. I mean, it's just like, it's like there's a hand up my vagina pulling downwards when I lean forward like that. There you go. Okay, there's two of us. Hold on. Like, let's stretch. Holy moly. How many of you walk around like this? Yep. I was going to show you guys this. See, I just leaned forward exactly the wrong way and made those adhesions pull. Yowza. You know what that means? I've been sitting too long. Hold on. Thank God for sit, stand desks. Whew. Okay, you just witnessed live on camera Jill Osborne's adhesions pulling. That was not fun. And you know, it's just like holy moly. It's like there's a hand up my vagina pulling downwards. Okay, here's my go-to. Here's one of my go-tos. Sorry, whenever I move my desk, I've got to, hopefully I won't accidentally unplug anything. What, Dad? What?
Trash.
Oh, here you go. Do I need to move the car? It's that's my 96-year-old dad putting the trash out. Okay, is that working? Stay. All right. I'm going to tell you, the thing that gets me through muscle stuff is this. These body heat packs are so good. And so, and you know, in 20 years, I've never raised the price on these in our store. They're $3.99 for 3. I've never raised the price. So frustrating. So frustrating. All right, so look, I'm going to open one up. So this is, you can use this on a plane, you can use this in a car, you can use it all day. These heating pads literally last for like 10 hours. So what you do is you just peel off the back. It's now activated, and you put it on fabric. And so what I will usually do is I will put it either like right here, right? But I'll put it right on the inside of my pants. You don't put it on skin, right? You put it on the inside of cotton. And it's going to take about 20 minutes to heat up. It'll get its good heat within an hour. Holy, you know, this is a first, guys. Like literally right at this very moment, I am having this spasm. It's so frustrating. And I just sat too long. This is exactly what happened after my surgery. So frustrating. What I do have is I got my Tiger Balm. So what I will be doing when we're done, and we're going to wrap this up probably in the next half hour, because so what I'm going to do is I've just put my heating pad on. I'm going to have to go take a quarter of a Flexeril so I can nip this in the bud. And I might use some CBD oil or Tiger Balm. I really, really, really love Tiger Balm. There's no CBD in it. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. Let me get it for you. You know, so this is not my bladder. This is not my bladder that's hurting. This is my pelvic floor and surgical adhesions. All right. And now the light's getting all weird too. All right. Well, it is what it is. So here's Tiger Balm. Right? I'm telling you, this stuff is incredible. It's like warm Vicks Vapor Rub. and I will lather this all over my hips where they tend to hurt a little bit more. I don't use it in front of my body because the smell can be a little bit overpowering. I would use it on the back of my body. Shoot. And then I did just buy this Shikai CBD cream unscented. And I don't know, I might try this. But ultimately, in the end, it's my job to use this, my glass wand, to try to get that thing to stop spasming, which I will be doing tonight. Not that you needed to know that. So frustrating. All right. Cheryl, how often do I have these life Vapus talks on IC? At least twice a month, sometimes 4 times a month, but they're going to all be moving over to Twitch. And I'm probably I might even stream every day. I might even just have office hours every day or several times a week where people can just drop in and ask questions. Because I don't know about you, but I absolutely love doing it. I was getting real tired after, just sitting here at the computer writing articles on IC, and I really love taking your questions. So it is my intention to do them much more frequently. If we can get enough participants, I can then squad stream, and I can have 4 people on camera, including IC doctors. And we've done a lot of free guest lectures on the IC Network website. And I want to do them by video, but we can't use the platform until we get a certain number of users, right? So I'm going to need everybody to go over and like that page. We've been testing software. I have a very low threshold for working through software. I hate it. And I've been setting up a couple different software systems this summer, and my brain is ready to explode learning new software. All right. Angela says, use Pre-Leap, but you're talking about an antacid for gastritis. So I also have had many episodes of gastritis as well as gastroparesis. And it was my IBS specialist who recommended Gaviscon. Here, hold on. I just had a pelvic floor spasm live. Holy moly. That's the first. I sat too long. I just had this violent spasm. Everybody got to see me wince. The reason why this is recommended for people with gastroparesis, the way it was explained to me, is it creates kind of a coating on the top of your stomach contents so that you don't have GERD. And so this is my go-to. I don't have to use it very often, but when I do, I do. Cheryl says, I've applied those compounded creams, but because I'm peeing so much, I feel it's defeating the purpose of applying. What do you think? Well, I think that you've got to understand that urine is irritating. And so at a minimum, maybe you might find using some Vaseline on your vulva or coconut oil on your vulva before you pee might create more of a coating so that urine isn't so irritating. Ask your doctor what they think would work. But, I mean, that's a very common. Swimmers do that. Swimmers will use some Vaseline to keep the chlorine off of your tender bits down there. Martha is just to please help with the names of the medications and that you can't speak English. And I am not fluent in Spanish. Anybody here fluent in Spanish? If you are, could you please tell Martha that there is a Spanish translation for treatments on the ICA website, I believe, icyhelp.org, and also at, let me find it. I just haven't, we just haven't put it together for the IC network, unfortunately, and I apologize for that. Hold on. I want to see if I can get a link. Hold on, my friends. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to put a link in, and this has some Spanish materials in here for a bunch of different bladder conditions. Okay. Hello, Kathy. Hi, Paula. Hi, Jamie. Thank you. Guys, if you find these helpful, make sure that you follow our Facebook page, but please come on over to YouTube and like our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Icy and Jill. And then you will also be signing up for our Twitch channel when that is ready. It should be ready, but I had to rebuild somebody's website over the weekend, family members. I was supposed to be testing it last weekend, but family came first. Hello, Paula from 10B Wales. Paula, I wish you guys all the best over in the UK. What a crazy time this is for all of us. Gabriella, you use the cinnamon, tiger balm, the red one? I always thought that stained, so I've always stayed with a clear one. Angela says, does any flavor work? Gaviscon does not come with any flavors. It just is what it is. It's kind of, I like it. Where'd I put it? I'm going to die if this has titanium dioxide in it. It does not. So it's just aluminum hydroxide and magnesium carbonate. Yeah. Oh, wait. Ooh. Yes. Nothing bad in it as a filler. Sean, I'd like you to know that I healed my bladder 13 years suffering from doing a detox. I was on the Dr. Morse protocol. I did not even do it 100%. I did 80% fruit plus cooked vegetarian lunch and salads. Took me 1 month to get well. I wasted thousands of dollars on supplements, most of which did little. The odd outstanding one. I've been always dedicated to natural healing. Just thought, so Sean, I'm going to offer you an opportunity to tell your story in our magazine. Would you write up your story and tell us what you did? If you tell us what you did and how it helped, I'm all about sharing success stories. I just am not going to do it if it's multi-level marketing or if you're getting paid for it, hon. So if you're somebody who's getting a percentage, I'm not going to do that. But if you would like to share how you healed your bladder, I'm all for it. You can send me an email, icnetwork@mac.com, and I'd love to get it out there. Kay says, "Have you heard anything on baclofen?" Baclofen is a wonderful non-sedating skeletal muscle relaxant. And so, if you've got to work during the day and you're struggling with muscle tension, baclofen is a great option. I personally can't use baclofen because it makes my chin itch. I don't know why, but it's clear I'm having some sort of reaction to it. So I stick with Flexeril, but Flexeril is sedating, and so I only do a quarter of a pill, and I have done that now for the last 10 days at night to try to get through these new adhesion things that are happening until we can fix it with physical therapy. And it's funny, Flexeril is, we now know that anticholinergics can be linked to dementia and cognitive decline. So that is the antidepressants and the bladder muscarinics. So if you've taken amitriptyline, also known as Elavil or nortriptyline or imipramine, or if you use Detrol or Ditropan daily, we had a research study came out from England. It was a very, very large study with several 100,000 participants, where they were able to establish a causative link between the use of these medications on a daily basis and cognitive decline / dementia. And so what that study found is that the skeletal muscle relaxants, like the Flexerils, were not linked to that same effect. And yet I have to say, quite honestly, what I've taken quarter of a pill for 10 days. And my memory is not quite, I can tell I drove by a neighbor and I forgot his name and I couldn't remember it. I still can't remember his name. It's like he's an old neighbor. It's like 10 blocks away. And it's like, I'm still totally forgetting his name. I still forgetting his name. Come on, I've known this guy for 30 years. And I just think that when you're taking medications like that, we want to keep it short term, right? It's killing me that I can't remember this guy's name. I was in a rush and I couldn't pull over. My email is icnetwork@mac.com. icnetwork@mac.com. Erin, Jill, can I ask you something? Yes, of course you can ask me something. Gabriella, what about humidity? It's been raining and hot here and the pain became awful. I've been struggling with chlamydia and IC. Anytime your body is exposed to stress, temperature stress, you're going to feel worse, whether it's extreme cold or extreme heat or extreme humidity. Kim, how can I support friends and encourage them to try new diets or treatments when they have only experienced little or to no improvement from them? Kim, what you really need to say to them is is there room for improvement? Would you like to be better than you are right now? And if the answer is yes, and what we say is, okay, then it's time to try a few new things. Let's try some new things and see if we can make a difference. Some people, for example, only try the diet for a month. But it's physiologically impossible for the bladder to heal itself significantly in a short period of time. It takes 2 weeks for one cell to be replaced, for God's sake. So in my experience, a lot of people give up or they just don't want to put the work into it, or they don't understand the anatomy. The other thing I would be saying is that, listen, if you're not responding to therapy, what the American Urology Association tells patients to do and doctors is to revisit the diagnosis. Let's make sure we haven't missed something here. Could this patient have fibroid tumors pushing on their bladder? Could this patient have a Tarlov cyst that could be pushing on a nerve supporting the bladder? Does this patient have pelvic floor dysfunction? That's why the subtyping is the best thing that's ever happened to the IC world, because it now helps us understand why So many patients don't respond. So if this patient has done bladder treatments for the last 15 years and is not better, then I would say, okay, then if bladder treatments aren't better, maybe your issue really isn't coming from your bladder. Maybe there's something else triggering it. And Kim, you can always have them call me. I'm really good at challenging old, what I call grizzled veterans, and getting them to look kind of outside of the box at other things that could be triggering their symptoms. Many of them are kind of old timers and they don't understand all the new research that's happened. Polly says, does anybody take amitriptyline for their bladder pain? I'm too afraid to stop. This is because my urologist has stopped instillation. So Paula, amitriptyline is not a pain medicine. Amitriptyline is an antidepressant. And when it's used in very low doses over time, it kind of calms the pain nerve down. But you don't take it like pain meds, where if you're in bad pain, you take 2 or 3 at a time. You could overdose. You don't want to do that. Amitriptyline is meant to be used at the same dose, a lower dose steadily over time. It would be really interesting to see how you did with something like Peora, where we've got research that shows that PEA resveratrol, this combination, dramatically improves the pain of IC in the majority of patients who use it. And it's an over-the-counter supplement that you can get right on the IC Network website. This would be an interesting experiment. And there's research behind it. I see at least one IC study behind it. PEA has been available in Europe for over a decade, and we have many, many research studies showing it helping a wide variety of chronic pain conditions, including IC. So this would be very interesting for you to try, and you can get this over on the IC Network website. But of course, talk to your doctor about it too. You got to tell your doctor that the pain is so persistent, and you don't quite know what you should do next. And let's see what your doctor's got to say. Talk to your doctor about the PEA. He might not know anything about it, or he might, but we've got the research behind it. And you know what? You know what? You can find the link on our website. I did a blog on it. You can print out the article on it. Kathy, does baclofen cause dementia? Kathy, the research study that was published in the Journal of American Medical Association showed that the skeletal muscle relaxants like baclofen and Flexeril were not linked significantly to the dementia issue. Teresa says, I'm slowly reducing your nortriptyline to get off of it. The dementia study is scary. So Teresa, that's when you want to talk to your doctor about options other than. Maybe there's something else that you can go on to that does not present, that's not an anticholinergic that would give you the comfort that you need, but without the risk. And that's why mirabegron is so important. Mirabetrix is the brand name. Mirabegron is a medication that can reduce frequency, urgency, and does not have the risk of dementia. It's not an anticholinergic. And so many doctors prefer to use mirabegron with their patients because they don't come with a risk, especially older patients. Unfortunately, it's very, very expensive. And insurance companies, ironically, will not cover it. They insist that patients use the medications linked to dementia. And that's something we've got to work on. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl, you should be able to watch this recording on Facebook and YouTube. Mirabegron, you're almost right. Mirabegon. So you're missing the A and the E in it. All right, my friends, listen, we've been going for 2 hours and 48 minutes. I'd love to go more, but clearly I've got to get off on my feet and get a heating pad and get this friggin' spasm under control. But before I do that, I have to, I always have to remind you that if there's a single most important thing I want you to remember from this conversation today is that IC is not your fault. You have done absolutely nothing wrong. There is no shame and no blame to be had if you are struggling with bladder or pelvic pain. I don't want you feeling bad. I don't want you carrying that weight on your shoulders. I don't want you hiding. I don't want you hiding this from your family members and your friends. I don't want you staying in your bedroom and not socializing. You're no different than someone who was hit by a car. You got hurt. You got hurt. And, one of the gifts of IC, one of the really weird gifts of dealing with something like this is the gift of compassion. Because you will never, ever, 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 ever walk away from somebody who's in pain, which is why I argue that, dealing with something like this makes you a better person. Because we have all been humbled to the extent that we have begged for help and asked God for help. And we know what it's like to suffer in silence. And we don't want any of our family members and friends to ever do that, which is why, in my opinion, one of the gifts of this really tragic experiences is the gift of compassion. If you have a family member hit by the car, not only are you going to run out there, you're going to sit there with them, you're going to hold their hand, you're going to ride in the ambulance, you're going to sit next to them at the emergency room, you're going to be there before, during, and after surgery. You're going to care for them when they come home, and you are going to love on them like they deserve. And I'm going to tell you right now, you deserve that same love. And you need to ask for it. You need to ask for it. If you need help, ask for it. If you're struggling, ask for it. If you're in pain, tell your family. Get them to help you. Ask them to help you. Ask your friends to help you. You do not have to do this alone. And one of the reasons why our theme for IC Awareness Month is IC Strong, we are stronger together, is because when you come to meetings like this, you don't just meet me, you meet everybody here. Do you know that this broadcast is going to probably be seen by 5,000 people within a week? You are not alone in any way, shape, or form. But again, we have to work together to make a difference, because some of you in here were told it was all in your head, even this freaking week. How dare they? And this is why, again, IC Awareness Month is so important. It's so important. Go over to icawareness.org and see what you can do. You can put all the imagery on your in your social networking accounts. There are daily facts that you can share. But what I really want you to do is print out the press release or save it to your desktop and send it to your local paper, and then tell your story. They don't want to do a story on Awareness Month, for God's sake. They don't want to do that. What they want is a story of how somebody's life was changed for the better or for the worse. And they can give you confidentiality. If you've got a bad story to share about how you've been abused by a local doctor or your medical system, ask them for confidentiality, and usually they'll give it to you. But if you're feeling comfortable enough to have your name out there and say, hey, man, for all of you wondering why I'm peeing all the time, I'll tell you why. I got this thing. And it started when I was a kid, or it started after I was abused, or it started after having a baby, or it started after whatever. But we got to get our stories out there. There are people right now who have no idea there's treatments. There are people right now who have no idea there are subtypes. There are people out there who believe that this is incurable and there is no hope. And the reality is that some of this is curable. Some of this is curable. It depends upon your subtype. All right, my friends, listen, I'm not going to have a freebie today because we're going to do a support group meeting on Sunday. So if you're around on Sunday, even though it's a Labor Day holiday, please come on and join us, 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern time. I hope to see you. If you have questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'd be happy to answer them. And we'll see. We'll see. If nobody shows, it'll be a short meeting. If a lot of people show, who knows? We might break a record and go for 6 hours. As long as I don't have a freaking pelvic floor spasm in the middle of it, right? All right, my friends, I wish you well. Have a wonderful night. I pray and hope that you sleep well. I hope that for those of you who are in flares, you've gotten something from this meeting that will give you some tips on what you can do. Carry hope in your heart. All right. I'll see you later. All right. Facebook is gone. Hello, YouTube. Last chance, YouTube. You got any questions for me? Becky says, I get this thick white discharge sometimes. I think it's related to estrogen atrophy. Does anyone else have this? It very well could be related to estrogen atrophy, hon. I mean, things change. There's a brand new book that Dr. Jane Gunter got released this week called The Vagina Bible. And it's already #1 on OBGYN on Amazon. I would get that. One of the things that she talks about is how the reason why the vagina is basically so clean is because it sloughs off cells all the time. And so having that discharge is a normal process for many patients on how the vagina cleans itself. Yeah, estrogen atrophy doesn't normally cause a thick white discharge. The other thing we would certainly want to think about, but you already say it's not yeast or BV, so it might be a normal part of your aging. I don't know, hun. I thought it went away when I started using the hormone cream, but now it's back. I have no clue. Kay says Pure is a good pain med. Take care and get those spasms. I know. Oh God, right? Like I swear right now there's a hand up my vagina pulling downwards. I hate it. Okay. See you later.